There is a moment that many of us have experienced, a moment when everything is clearly our own doing. But the mouth says something completely different. That was not my fault. The circumstances were like that. The other person was also at fault. I had no choice. Those words flow out naturally, smoothly, sometimes even convincingly. But deep inside, you know. You always know. And the moment you choose between owning your mistake and shifting the blame, that is one of the moments that defines who you truly are. Blame and accountability. Two simple responses to the same reality, but they create two entirely different lives. The person who blames lives in a world where they are the victim of circumstances, of others, of systems, of bad luck. The person who owns their mistakes lives in a world where they can learn, adjust, and grow. Same event. Completely different story and completely different futures. But first, let's understand why blame comes so easily. This is not a matter of morality or weak character, this is biology. Our brains are designed to protect the ego. When we make a mistake, a part of the brain, especially the amygdala, immediately activates a defensive response, similar to when facing danger. Acknowledging a mistake feels like being attacked because neurologically, the brain does not clearly distinguish between a physical threat and a threat to one's self-image. The result is that blame-finding external causes is the most natural and immediate response the brain generates to protect you from the pain of admitting a mistake. Psychologist Leon Festinger described this mechanism through the concept of cognitive dissonance. When our behavior contradicts our self-image, I am a good person, I am capable, I am trustworthy, the brain experiences a very uncomfortable psychological tension. To release that tension, the brain has two choices. Either change the behavior and admit the mistake, or change how the event is interpreted so it no longer contradicts the self-image. Blame is the second option, and it works in the short term because it releases the tension immediately. But the long-term cost is very high. The first cost of blame is that you lose control over your own life. When you say that was not my fault, you are simultaneously saying I have no power to change this. Because if other people or circumstances are the cause, then it is also those people or circumstances that must change before the situation changes. You become someone who waits, waiting for others to change, waiting for circumstances to change, waiting for life to become fairer. And in the meantime, your life stands still. The second cost is that you learn nothing. Every act of blame is a missed learning opportunity. Because if the mistake is not yours, there is nothing you need to learn. Nothing you need to change. Nothing you need to do differently. And so the same mistakes repeat in different forms, with different people, in different circumstances, but with the same outcome. Because the root of the problem is never recognized or addressed. The third cost is that relationships are eroded. Nothing destroys trust and respect faster than consistently refusing to take responsibility. People can sense when someone is shifting blame, no matter how reasonable the justifications sound. And over time, they withdraw, not because they dislike you, but because they no longer trust your emotional maturity. By contrast, the person who dares to own their mistakes receives something that few people think about: power. When you say that was my mistake, and here is what I will do differently, you are asserting your authority over the situation. You are no longer a victim, you are an actor. You are not waiting for circumstances to change, you change yourself, and from that, change the circumstances. This is why owning a mistake, truly owning it, not just going through the motions, is an act of strength, not weakness. Psychologist Harriet Lerner, author of Why Won't You Apologize, analyzed in detail the difference between a genuine apology and a disguised one. A genuine apology has 5 components: specifically acknowledging what you did wrong, acknowledging the impact of that action on the other person, expressing genuine remorse, not attaching reasons or justifications, and committing to change the behavior. A disguised apology sounds like, "I'm sorry if you felt hurt." This does not take responsibility, it redirects the issue to the other person's emotions. "I'm sorry, but you also." This destroys the apology entirely by immediately redirecting to blame. There is an important distinction that many people confuse. Owning a mistake does not mean accepting every criticism, does not mean agreeing with every judgment others make of you, and does not mean diminishing yourself. Owning a mistake means that when you are genuinely wrong, you see it clearly, you acknowledge it directly, and you take responsibility for it. This is the difference between accountability and self-blame. Accountability is seeing reality and acting to improve. Self-blame is drowning in guilt without moving forward. The story of maturity through owning mistakes is not just a personal story, it is the story of organizations, of leaders, of nations. The most remembered and respected leaders in history are not those who never made mistakes, they are those who, when they made mistakes, had the courage to acknowledge them openly and change direction. Abraham Lincoln changed many decisions throughout the American Civil War after recognizing they were not working, and he did not hide that. Winston Churchill openly acknowledged serious strategic errors in World War I. And that very maturity was what made him a trustworthy leader in World War II. Research in organizational psychology shows that leaders who dare to own their mistakes in front of their teams rather than concealing or deflecting build higher psychological safety cultures within their organizations. And psychological safety, the concept researched by Professor Amy Edmondson at Harvard Business School, is the single strongest predictor of high team performance and innovation. When a leader owns a mistake, they send a signal to the entire team: here, it is safe to admit errors and learn from them, and from that, everyone becomes more willing to try, fail, learn, and improve. An important concept related to this rule is locus of control, proposed by psychologist Julian Rotter in the 1950s. People with an internal locus of control believe that their life outcomes depend primarily on their own actions and decisions. People with an external locus of control believe that their life outcomes depend primarily on external circumstances, other people, luck, or fate. Research consistently across decades shows that people with an internal locus of control tend to be psychologically healthier, more successful in their careers, maintain better relationships, and recover more quickly from adversity. Blame is the classic expression of an external locus of control. Owning mistakes is the expression of an internal locus of control, and you can train that control point to move inward. A very specific practice to develop the capacity to own mistakes: begin with a daily reflection question in what happened today. What part was my responsibility? Not all of it, not everything is your fault. But in most situations involving conflict or unwanted outcomes, there is always a portion, however small, that you contributed to. When you honestly ask that question and honestly answer it, you are training your accountability muscle. And like every muscle, it grows stronger over time. Maturity is not never making mistakes. Maturity is knowing when you were wrong, daring to say so, and choosing to learn from it rather than hide from it. A truly mature person does not need to be right all the time, they just need to be honest enough to see when they are wrong, and courageous enough to do something meaningful with that. Like and subscribe so you never miss the next rule. Comment below: when was the last time you truly owned a mistake, not just moved past it, but genuinely owned it?